The chamber was massive, built to hold representatives from 17 different species. Taman Park sat in the human section, his hands folded on the desk in front of him. He wore a simple black suit, nothing fancy. Next to him, Yuna Choi reviewed documents on her tablet, her face calm. Behind them, Jin Wuhan stood at attention, his security uniform crisp and clean. The lights dimmed as the council speaker called the session to order. Taman had been to hundreds of these meetings over the past 12 years. He knew how they worked. The tall Varath representatives would speak first, their crystalline voices echoing through the chamber. Then the Korlax, with their multiple arms gesturing dramatically. The Trinali would follow, always speaking in pairs. Today's agenda had only one item. Resolution 4477. Taman had read it 3 times. The words were polite, diplomatic, but the meaning was clear. Humanity would lose their voting rights. Human ships would be restricted from 14 sectors. Human colonies would need council approval for any expansion. The reason given was standard. Humanity was too young, too unpredictable, too dangerous. The Varath representative stood first. His name was Kethril, and he had worked with humans before. Taman thought they were friends, or at least friendly. Kethril's speech was short. He talked about human military growth, about weapons development, about aggressive expansion. He said these things with regret in his voice, but he said them anyway. When he finished, he voted yes. The Korlax were next. Their representative, Vorna, used all 4 arms to emphasize her points. She talked about economic concerns, about humans undercutting established trade routes, about flooding markets with cheap goods. She mentioned cultural differences, the human tendency to question everything. She voted yes. One by one, the species spoke. The Trinali talked about human influence on younger races. The Pithros mentioned territorial disputes. The Calvin brought up old grievances from first contact. Each speech was different, but each vote was the same. Yes. 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 Taman watched and listened. Yuna had stopped looking at her tablet. Jinwoo's jaw was tight, but he remained still. They all knew this was coming. The signs had been there for months. Closed-door meetings that humans weren't invited to, trade agreements that suddenly needed renegotiation, small slights that added up. When it came time for humanity to speak, the speaker called Taman's name. He stood slowly, buttoning his jacket. He walked to the central podium, his steps echoing in the quiet chamber. 17 species watched him. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked satisfied. A few wouldn't meet his eyes. Taman didn't bring notes. He didn't need them. He looked around the chamber, taking in the faces he had known for years. Then he spoke. "Thank you," he said. His voice was quiet, but the chamber's acoustics carried it perfectly. "Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration. Humanity has been part of this council for 43 years. We have learned much. We have contributed what we could. We have tried to be good partners." He paused. The chamber was completely silent. "But it's clear that our presence here is no longer wanted. It's clear that our voice doesn't matter. It's clear that no matter what we do, no matter how we try, we will always be seen as the problem." Taman's voice didn't rise. He didn't sound angry. He sounded tired. "So we won't fight this. We won't argue. We accept your decision." Some of the representatives shifted in their seats. This wasn't the response they expected. Humans were supposed to be emotional, unpredictable. They expected protests, threats, maybe even anger. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. Taman continued. "We will remove our personnel from all council facilities. We will cease participation in all council programs. We will respect council space and ask that you respect ours. We wish you all the best." He didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked back to his seat. He gathered his things, a simple briefcase and a data chip. Yuna and Jinwoo followed his lead. They packed quickly, efficiently. The entire chamber watched them in stunned silence. As they reached the door, the Varath representative called out, "Ambassador Park, surely we can discuss this. There's no need for such drastic action." Taman stopped. He turned back, his face neutral. "Councillor Kethril, you just voted to strip my people of their rights and their voice. What exactly is there to discuss?" He didn't wait for an answer. The 3 humans left the chamber. The door closed behind them with a soft hiss. In the hallway, other human staff were already moving. They had been listening to the broadcast. Everyone knew what to do. They had planned for this possibility, hoped it wouldn't happen, but planned anyway. Taman pulled out his communicator. "Execute protocol departure," he said quietly. Across council space, in embassies and consulates, on trade stations and research facilities, humans received the same message. It was time to leave. In the council chamber, the representatives looked at each other. Some seemed confused. Others looked satisfied. The Korlax representative spoke first. "Well, that's done. They'll be back in a few weeks asking for another chance. Humans are too dependent on council resources to actually leave." Several others nodded. The Trinali representative wasn't so sure. "Did you see Ambassador Park's face? That wasn't a negotiating tactic. That was goodbye." The speaker called for order. "Regardless, we have other business to attend to. The human situation will resolve itself. Now, regarding the trade dispute between Vareth and Kelthar." But even as they moved on to other topics, some of them felt uneasy. The humans had been part of everything for 4 decades. Their ships carried cargo across half the council space. Their engineers maintained systems on dozens of stations. Their researchers collaborated on hundreds of projects. Their diplomats mediated disputes that no one else wanted to touch. Outside the chamber, Taman stood at a viewing window, looking out at the stars. Yuna joined him. "Orders are going out now," she said. "Every facility, every station, every ship. We're starting the withdrawal." Jinwoo approached from the other direction. "Security teams are coordinating evacuation schedules. No incidents so far. Everyone's staying calm." Taman nodded. He felt strange. Not angry, not sad, just empty. He had given 12 years of his life to this council. He had believed in what it represented, in what it could be. He had thought humanity could find a place here, could be accepted as equals. He had been wrong. "How long until we're completely out?" he asked. Yuna checked her tablet. 3 weeks for personnel. 6 weeks for equipment and materials. 8 weeks for complete withdrawal. "Make it faster if possible," Taman said. "I don't want to give them time to change their minds or make this complicated." Down in the docking bay, the human diplomatic ship was already preparing for departure. Engineers ran final checks. Pilots filed flight plans. Support staff loaded the last containers. Within hours, the ship would leave and humanity's official presence at the council would be gone. In his quarters, Taman packed his personal belongings. Pictures of meetings, awards from various species, gifts from colleagues. He looked at each one, remembering. Then he packed them away. That chapter was over. Whatever came next, humanity would face it alone. And somehow that felt right. The research station on Kelthara 4 had been Soman Lee's home for 6 years. She knew every corridor, every lab, every window that looked out over the Purple Mountains. Now she was watching it all being packed away. Scientists moved through the facility with purpose, disconnecting equipment, backing up data, preparing everything for transport. Yun Kim worked in Lab 7, carefully disassembling a quantum resonance chamber. He had built it himself, working alongside Keltharan physicist Trelvin for 3 years. They were close to a breakthrough in slipstream navigation, a discovery that could change space travel forever. Now he was taking it apart piece by piece. Trelvin watched from the doorway, her scales shifting colors with distress. "Yun, please. We can finish this. Just 2 more months, maybe 3. Why leave now?" Hyun didn't look up. His hands moved steadily, disconnecting cables and removing calibration sensors. "Orders from Earth, all personnel are coming home. But the research. 5 years of work. You can't just abandon it." Finally, Hyun paused. He turned to face his colleague. "I'm not abandoning it. I'm taking it with me." He gestured to the containers being filled with equipment. "Every piece, every measurement, every calculation. It's all coming with us." Trelvin's scales flickered again. "What about the council patents? The shared research agreements? This work belongs to both our peoples." Hyun's expression was sad but firm. "The council voted to restrict humanity. They made their choice. This is ours." He went back to work. Similar scenes played out across 70 worlds. In the orbital trade hub above Korlax Prime, human merchants closed their shops. Captain Doyen Shin stood in his cargo bay, directing workers to load the last shipment. His vessel, Morning Prophet, had operated this route for 15 years. He knew every station master, every customs official, every shortcut through the shipping lanes. A Korlax administrator rushed up to him, all 4 arms waving frantically. "Captain Shin, you can't leave. We have contracts. Long-term agreements. What about the medical supplies scheduled for next week? The mining equipment we ordered?" Doyen kept checking his manifest. All contracts are being terminated. Refunds will be processed within 30 days. You'll need to find other suppliers. Other suppliers? You humans handle 60% of our commercial shipping. There are no other suppliers who can take on that volume. Doyen looked up then. I'm sorry. I truly am. But this isn't my decision. It's not even Earth's decision. The Council made this choice when they voted. He returned to his work. The Korlax administrator stood there, watching the cargo ship prepare to depart. Around the station, other human vessels were doing the same. The docking bays that were usually bustling with activity were emptying out. The humans weren't making a fuss. They weren't protesting or complaining. They were simply leaving, quickly and quietly. On Trinali Station 6, Communications Officer Unji Kang sat at her desk, processing messages. Her screen was full of them. Confused aliens asking questions, business partners wanting explanations, friends trying to understand why their human colleagues were suddenly packing up and leaving. Her responses were all the same. Polite, brief, and revealing nothing. Humanity is pursuing independent interests. We appreciate our past collaboration. We wish you well. She had typed those words hundreds of times in the past week. Each message felt heavier than the last. An incoming call interrupted her work. She accepted it, and a Trinali face appeared on her screen. Kelvara, a linguist she had worked with for 4 years. They had shared meals, exchanged stories about their families, collaborated on translation protocols. Yunji, what's happening? Why are you leaving? Yunji felt tired. She wanted to explain, to share everything, to make Kelvara understand. But her orders were clear. I'm sorry, Kel, I can't discuss it. Please understand, can't or won't. There was hurt in Kelvara's voice. Does it matter? Unji's voice was soft. The decision has been made. We're leaving. I wish things were different. The call ended. Yunji stared at the blank screen for a moment, then went back to processing messages. There were still hundreds to go. In the engineering section of Verath Medical Complex, Boranam was doing something she never thought she would do. She was deleting her research. Not just removing it from the shared servers, but completely erasing it. Years of work on regenerative medicine, treatments that could save millions of Verath lives. Gone. Her supervisor, a Verath named Kethis, stood behind her. Researcher Nam, this is extreme. Surely the political situation doesn't require destroying scientific knowledge. Bora's fingers moved across her keyboard. This isn't destruction. I'm taking copies with me, but the Council doesn't get to have it both ways. They can't exclude us and still expect us to give them our work. But people will die without these treatments. Bora stopped typing. She closed her eyes for a moment. Then maybe the Council should have thought about that before they voted. She resumed her work. The data deletion continued. Not just her research, but everything. Human contributions to Verath medicine, to Korlax engineering, to Trinali agriculture. Decades of knowledge and innovation, simply disappearing from Council databases. The humans weren't being malicious. They weren't sabotaging anything. They were just taking what was theirs and leaving nothing behind. Captain Minho Song stood on the bridge of his frigate. Silent departure. Through the view screen, he could see the border of Council space. His ship was the last human military vessel still inside. Behind him, the exodus was complete. Thousands of ships, hundreds of thousands of people, all heading back to human territory. His navigator, Yuna Park, turned to him. Sir, we've received confirmation. The last civilian transport has crossed the border. We're clear to proceed, Minho nodded. Take us home. The silent departure moved forward, crossing the invisible line that marked the edge of Council jurisdiction. As they passed into unclaimed space, Minho felt something release in his chest. They were done. After 43 years of trying to fit in, trying to prove themselves worthy, trying to earn respect they were never going to receive, humanity was finally free of it. Back in Council space, the effects were already being felt. On Korlax Prime, factory manager Telmora stared at an offline production line. The humans who maintained it had left yesterday. The instruction manuals they left behind might as well have been written in ancient code. His engineers couldn't make sense of them. How long until we can restart production? He asked his lead technician. The technician, a younger Korlax named Dren, looked uncertain. I don't know. Days, weeks? The humans always handled this. We watched them work, but we never learned the details. Telmora felt a chill. This wasn't just one production line. This was happening across the planet. Humans had been integrated into Korlax society for decades, maintaining systems, running operations, keeping things working. Everyone thought they were learning from the humans, that eventually they would take over. But the humans had always been there, always available to fix problems, always ready to help. There had never been urgency to truly learn. Now they were gone, and the Korlax were discovering just how much they had depended on them. On Trinali, the Port Authority watched cargo traffic drop by half in just 2 weeks. The humans hadn't just operated ships. They had managed logistics networks, optimized routes, coordinated schedules. Without them, the whole system was slowing down, becoming inefficient and costly. In the council chambers, emergency meetings were being called. Representatives were starting to panic. Messages were being sent to Earth, to human colonies, to anyone who might listen. But every message received the same automated response. Your message has been received. Humanity is pursuing independent development. We wish you well. The humans had left, quietly, completely, and apparently forever. 6 months had passed since the vote. Councillor Vethkar of the Varath stood before the Economic Committee, and for the first time in his long career, he had no idea what to say. The numbers on the display behind him told a story he didn't want to believe. Our primary medical manufacturer has ceased operations, he said finally. The facility is intact. The equipment is there, but it doesn't work. Or rather, we don't know how to make it work. A Trinali councillor leaned forward. You had decades to learn the systems. Surely your engineers can figure it out? Vethkar's crystalline features shifted in what his species used for a bitter smile. We thought we had decades. The humans always said they were training our people. Next year, they said. After this project, they said. We believed them. We didn't realize they were politely telling us we weren't ready. He paused. Or perhaps they knew this day would come and were preparing for it. The truth was worse than that. The humans had tried to train Varath engineers, but every time there was a choice between having a human expert fix something quickly or waiting for a Varath apprentice to learn, the Varath managers chose speed. Let the humans do it. We'll learn later. Later never came. Now the nanofabrication system sat silent. The genetic sequencers were offline. The medical treatments that saved thousands of lives each year were unavailable. And the humans who knew how to run everything were gone. On Korlax Prime, Infrastructure Administrator Trenvola had not slept properly in weeks. Power grids were failing across 3 continents. Not catastrophically, not all at once, but slowly, steadily, like a machine gradually grinding to a halt. She stood in the central control room, surrounded by technicians who looked as exhausted as she felt. The main display showed a map of the planet with red indicators spreading like disease. Sector 15 is down to 60% capacity, one technician reported. We can reroute power from Sector 20, but that's already strained. Do it, Trenvola ordered. Then she asked the question she had been asking for months. Has anyone figured out the human maintenance protocols? Silence. They had the manuals. They had the documentation. They had videos of humans performing maintenance. But something was missing. The humans had possessed an intuitive understanding of the systems, an ability to diagnose problems that went beyond what was written in any manual. The humans were here for 40 years, Trenvola said quietly. 40 years of temporary contracts. 40 years of promising to finish training our people. We never questioned why they never left. We never wondered why we never seemed to learn enough. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. They were patient. They were polite, and they made themselves absolutely essential while we believed we were using them. A junior technician spoke up nervously. Administrator, perhaps we should send another message to Earth. Offer better terms. Apologize for the Council's decision. Trenvola shook her head. We've sent 200 messages. Everyone gets the same response. They're done with us. Across Council space, similar conversations were happening. The Trinali Commerce Guild held an emergency session. Trade Minister Kira Ahn sat in the guest section. She was human, or had been. She had married a Trinali and chosen to stay when her people left. Now she watched the guild members argue about the collapse of their economy. The shipping costs have tripled, one guild member complained. Routes that were profitable are now breaking even or losing money. Another added, we've lost access to 12 sectors entirely. The navigation data is outdated and no one knows how to update it. Finally, the guildmaster turned to Kira. You're human. You understand their systems. Can you help us? Kira had known this was coming. She had been dreading it. I was a trade negotiator, not a logistics expert. I don't know how to maintain navigation databases or optimize cargo routes. That required specialized training and constant updates from the Human Navigation Network. She paused. A network that no longer includes council space. But surely you can contact them. Ask them to help or at least sell us the data. I've tried, Kira said softly. I get the same response as everyone else. They're polite. They're professional. And they're completely uninterested in helping. The guildmaster's face darkened. This is absurd. They can't just abandon decades of infrastructure. Kira felt something snap inside her. They didn't abandon it. You pushed them out. The council voted to restrict them, to remove their voice, to treat them as second-class members. Did you think they would stay and serve you after that? Did you think they had no pride? The chamber went silent. No one had an answer. The truth was becoming clear across council space. Humans hadn't just been members of the council. They had been the glue holding it together, not through force or political maneuvering, but through 1,000 small services that everyone had taken for granted. They had run the commercial databases that tracked goods across 70 worlds. They had maintained the communication relays that let species talk to each other in real time. They had provided the neutral ground where species could negotiate without losing face. They had trained peacekeepers who prevented small disputes from becoming wars. They had shared technologies that other species adapted and improved, and they had done it all so smoothly, so efficiently, that no one had noticed how much they depended on it. The council called another emergency session. Representatives from all 17 species attended. The chamber that had seemed so united 6 months ago now felt fractured. Species were blaming each other. Old grievances were resurfacing. Without human mediators, every dispute became harder to resolve. The speaker called for order. We must discuss the human situation. Our initial assumption that they would return has proven incorrect. We need a new strategy. Councillor Vethkar stood. I propose we send an official delegation to Earth. Offer them full restoration of rights. Apologize for the restrictions, a Korlax councillor objected. That shows weakness. They left the council. They broke agreements. They followed the rules perfectly, a Trinali representative countered. They fulfilled every obligation before leaving. They didn't sabotage anything or steal anything. They simply took what was theirs and left. Exactly, Vethkar said. They acted with more honor than we did, and now we're paying the price. The debate continued for hours. Some wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to demand the humans' return. A few suggested trying to manage without them. But as the day wore on, reports kept coming in. Another factory offline, another trade route failing, another system breaking down. Finally, they voted. The council would send an official delegation to Earth. They would offer full council membership, complete equality, access to all restricted sectors. They would apologize. The delegation departed a week later. 3 ships carrying representatives from 12 species. They traveled to the edge of human space and sent a message requesting permission to enter and speak with Earth government. The response came within an hour. Your request is denied. Council vessels are not permitted in human territory. Please respect our borders. If you wish to communicate, you may send written messages through official channels. The delegation sent messages. Long formal apologies, offers of restoration, promises of equal treatment, pleas for help with failing infrastructure. Every message received a response. The same response. Thank you for your message. Humanity has moved forward with independent development. We wish the Council well in resolving its internal matters. We are not interested in rejoining at this time. The delegation returned with nothing. The Council met again, more desperate now. Someone suggested offering money, resources, territory. Another suggested threatening trade sanctions, though everyone knew humans no longer traded with Council space anyway. In the end, they did nothing, because there was nothing they could do. The humans had made their choice. They had closed the door quietly and politely, and no amount of knocking would make them open it again. Councillor Vethkar sat in his quarters that night, looking at old photos from joint research projects. Smiling humans working alongside Vareth scientists. He remembered thinking the humans were eager to learn from superior Vareth knowledge. Now he wondered if it had been the other way around. If the humans had been patiently teaching while the Vareth had been too proud to realize it, he composed another message to Ambassador Park. Personal this time, not official. He wrote about regrets, about misunderstandings, about wishing things had gone differently. The response came 2 days later. Brief and polite. Thank you for your message, Counselor. I hope you and your people find the path forward. Humanity has, that was all. No anger, no bitterness. Just a polite goodbye from someone who had already moved on. 18 months after humanity's departure, the first shots of the Keltheran-Vareth War were fired over a mining asteroid in disputed space. Both sides claimed the territory. Both sides needed the rare minerals it contained. Neither side had the refining technology to actually use those minerals anymore. Counselor Peltheran watched from his homeworld as Vareth warships engaged Keltheran defenders. He had voted for peace. His whole career had been dedicated to diplomatic solutions. But now, with human mediators gone, there was no neutral ground for negotiations. Every attempt at talks collapsed into accusations and old grudges. The first Varath city to be hit by orbital bombardment had a population of 3 million. The defense grid should have protected them. It was state-of-the-art, designed by a human consulting firm 15 years ago. But when the attack came, the grid failed. Not completely, but enough. Enough that missiles got through. Enough that thousands died. Peltheran stood in the defense ministry, watching technicians frantically try to restore full functionality. What happened? He demanded. This system was tested last month. The lead technician, her crystalline features flickering with stress, pulled up diagnostic data. The grid is responding, but the predictive algorithms aren't working properly. They should anticipate attack vectors and adjust defenses automatically. Instead, they're 0.2 seconds too slow. It's like they're missing information. What information? I don't know. The humans who designed this built in something, some extra layer of processing. We never understood what it did. We just knew it worked. She looked at Peltheran helplessly. Now it doesn't. The war expanded. Other species took sides or tried to stay neutral. The Council attempted to intervene, but without human peacekeepers and diplomats, every mediation attempt failed. The violence spread. On Corlax Prime, the economic collapse had become catastrophic. Freighter Captain Dalmora sat in his ship's cockpit, staring at an engine that refused to start. Around him, the commercial spaceport was half empty. Ships sat grounded, unable to fly. His chief engineer emerged from the engine room, all four arms hanging limp with exhaustion. Captain, I can't fix it. The primary manifold needs replacement, but the parts we ordered 3 months ago never arrived. The manufacturer went offline. Can we use substitute parts? We tried. They don't fit right. The tolerances are wrong. The original parts were manufactured using human materials science. We don't have that anymore. The engineer looked defeated. This ship is 30 years old. It's full of human-designed components. Every time something breaks, we can't replace it properly. Dalmora looked around the spaceport. Dozens of ships in the same situation. The Corlax had built a thriving economy on trade, using ships and systems that humans had designed or improved. Now those systems were failing one by one and there were no replacements. What do we do? The engineer asked quietly. Dalmora had no answer. He just sat there in his dead ship, watching his livelihood crumble. In Human Intelligence Headquarters on Europa Station, analyst Jiwan Park reviewed the latest data from Council Space. She compiled reports for Director Sang Woo-oh, tracking the deteriorating situation. The numbers were grim. Council commercial traffic is down 72%, she reported at the morning briefing. The Keltheran-Vareth conflict has expanded to involve 6 species. The Corlax economic zone is in complete collapse. Trinali food production is down 40% due to failed agricultural systems. Sangwoo studied the reports. Any change in their communications to us? They're still sending messages. Mostly pleas for help now. Some are offering substantial concessions. The Vareth even offered us 3-star systems if we'll help them end the war. And our response? Standard. Polite acknowledgement. No engagement. Jiwon hesitated. Director, some of the analysts are asking why we don't help. They're dying over there. Millions of civilians caught in wars and economic collapse. Sangwoo was quiet for a moment. And if we go back? If we help them? What happens the next time they decide we're too young, too dangerous, too different? Do we put ourselves back in that position, dependent on their approval, waiting for them to push us out again? No, sir. We tried for 43 years to be part of their council. We contributed, we cooperated, we compromised. And they voted to restrict us anyway. They made us choose between dignity and dependence. We chose dignity. Sang-woo looked at the data again. What's happening to them is tragic. But it's not our responsibility anymore. They have to figure this out themselves. Ji-won nodded and returned to her analysis. But the images stayed with her. Refugee ships overcrowded with civilians. Cities going dark as power grids failed. Species that had lived in relative peace for centuries now at each other's throats. The fracturing of council space accelerated. The Pethros withdrew into isolationism, closing their borders to all outsiders. The Calvin did the same. Within months, 8 of the 17 species had retreated to their own territories, abandoning the council entirely. The remaining 9 tried to hold things together. Emergency sessions became daily occurrences. They tried to rebuild the infrastructure humans had maintained. They tried to recreate the databases, the logistics networks, the communication systems, but it was like trying to rebuild a spacecraft while it was falling. Every problem they fixed revealed 3 more underneath. Trade Minister Kira An watched the Trinali government struggle. She had been human once, but she had married into this society, built a life here. Now she watched that life fall apart. Food was being rationed. Medicine was scarce. The transportation network was failing. Her Trinali husband, Keltorn, came home exhausted every day from his job at the Commerce Ministry. "We found another cache of human-designed software today," he told her one evening. "Agricultural optimization program. But they're encrypted and we don't have the keys." Kira felt old anger rising. Why would they encrypt it? Because it's proprietary. It belongs to human companies. We were licensing it, not owning it. When humans left, the licenses expired. Keltorn collapsed into a chair. "We didn't even know. We thought we had these systems. We didn't realize we were just borrowing them." The realization was spreading across council space. So much of what they had thought was theirs had actually belonged to humans. Not through any deception, but through normal trade and licensing that everyone had ignored the details of. Now those details mattered. Deep in unclaimed space, far from council territory, Construction Administrator Hyen Cho stood on an observation deck watching Project Threshold take shape. Massive shipyards floated in perfect formation. Research stations orbited nearby. Entire cities were being built on asteroids and moons. Her assistant Minseo handed her the latest progress report. "All major construction is on schedule. The new exploration gates should be operational in 3 months. Any contact from council space?" Haeon asked, same as always. Messages requesting help, some offering payment, a few threatening trade sanctions. Minseo smiled slightly. "We send the standard response and archive them." Haeon looked at the construction. Humanity wasn't hiding. They weren't retreating. They were building something new, far from the council that had rejected them. They had found other species out here. Younger civilizations just reaching for the stars. Species that saw humans as partners, not threats. "It's strange," Minseo said. "A year ago we were desperately trying to fit in with the council. Now we're out here doing fine without them. Better than fine, actually." Haeon nodded. "Sometimes you don't realize how much someone was holding you back until you're free of them." She watched a construction crew assemble a new station module. "The council wanted to teach us our place. They taught us we didn't need them instead." Back in council space, the spiral continued. The war ground on. The economy kept contracting. Species blamed each other for the crisis. Some blamed the humans for leaving. Others blamed themselves for driving them away. Counselor Vethkar sent one more message to Taemin Park. Not asking for help this time. Just apologizing, explaining that he finally understood what they had lost. Not just the technology or the services, but the partnership. The humans had been trying to build something together and the council had thrown it away. The response was the same as always. Polite, professional, final. "Thank you for your message. Humanity wishes you well," that was all. And somehow that was worse than anger would have been. The humans didn't hate them. The humans had just moved on, leaving the council to face the consequences of its own choices. 5 years had passed since the vote. Taemin Park stood at the front of a lecture hall in the Human Diplomatic Academy on New Seoul Station. He was older now, his hair showing more gray, but his eyes were still sharp. The students before him were young, eager, ready to represent humanity among the stars. "Today we'll discuss the council withdrawal," he said. I know it's in your history books, but I was there. I want you to understand why we left. A student raised her hand. Her name was Jisoo Ryu, and she was top of her class. Ambassador Park, the textbooks say we left because the council restricted us, but we had done that before with other challenges. Why was this different? Taman smiled slightly. Good question. We had faced obstacles before, yes. Trade disputes, territorial disagreements, cultural misunderstandings. We had worked through all of them. But this was different because it wasn't about a specific problem. It was about whether we belonged at all. He pulled up an image of the old council chamber. For 43 years, we tried to be good members. We contributed to every initiative. We mediated disputes. We shared technology. We believed that if we just proved ourselves worthy, we would be accepted as equals. He paused. But the vote showed us the truth. No matter what we did, we would always be the young upstarts. Always too different. Always too dangerous in their eyes. Another student spoke up. But sir, wasn't leaving a kind of surrender? Didn't we give up? No, Taman said firmly. Leaving was choosing dignity over accommodation. There's a difference between compromise and self-erasure. We had been trying so hard to fit in that we were forgetting who we were. The vote freed us from that. He advanced to the next slide, showing graphs and charts. Look at these numbers. In 5 years since leaving, we've established relations with 42 new species. We've built infrastructure that rivals what the Council took centuries to create. We've advanced our technology by decades. We didn't need the Council's approval to succeed. We just needed to stop seeking it. The students listened intently. This was their heritage, the decision that had shaped their generation. In what remained of Council space, the situation had stabilized, but at a terrible cost. The war between the Keltherans and Verath had finally ended, not through diplomacy but through mutual exhaustion. Both sides had lost millions. The territories they fought over remained unusable because neither had the technology to exploit them. The 17 species of the Council were now just 9. 8 had withdrawn into isolation, closing their borders and cutting contact. Of the remaining 9, 3 were barely functional. Their economies had collapsed. Their infrastructure was failing. They survived on what little they could maintain and what they could trade among themselves. Councillor Vethkar was old now. He had spent 5 years watching his civilization decline. The Verath were still advanced by many standards, but they had lost so much. Medical treatments that saved lives were unavailable. Technologies that made life comfortable were gone. They were learning to make do with less. He sat in his chambers looking at a holographic display showing council space. So much darkness where there used to be light. So many silent worlds where there used to be bustling trade. The humans had been gone for 5 years, but their absence still echoed everywhere. A message arrived. Vethkar was surprised to see it was from Taman Park. He hadn't heard from the human ambassador in 3 years. His hand shook slightly as he opened it. The message was brief. Councillor Vethkar, I hope this finds you well. I wanted you to know that I hold no anger toward you personally. I know you voted for restrictions because you believed it was right for your people. I understand that. I also want you to know that humanity has moved forward. We are building something new and we are content. I hope you and your people find your own path forward. With respect, Taman Park. Vethkar stared at the message for a long time. No bitterness. No triumph. Just a simple statement from someone who had genuinely moved on. He composed a response thanking Taman, wishing him well. He didn't ask for help. There was no point. At the edge of human territory, a young Trinali named Kethmara stood before Admiral Minho Song. She had traveled for weeks to get here, crossing through dangerous space using old routes that most had forgotten. She was barely 30 years old, born after the humans left. She had grown up hearing stories about the old council, about the time before the collapse. Admiral Song, she said formally, I come as a representative of the Trinali government. We wish to establish diplomatic relations with humanity. Minho studied her. She was nervous but determined. Why now? It's been 5 years. Because it took us this long to understand, Kethmara said honestly. My generation, we don't remember the old council. We don't remember humans as members who needed to prove themselves. We just know that you left and everything fell apart after. We want to understand what we lost. And if possible, we want to build something new. Your council voted to restrict us. That council doesn't exist anymore, Kethmara said. The Trinali are independent now. We make our own decisions. We don't speak. For the other species, only ourselves. She met his eyes. We can't undo what happened, but we can ask if there's a chance to start over, not as council and member, but as equals. Minho was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. I'll forward your request to Earth. But I need you to understand something. If we do establish relations, it will be as true partners, not as the Trinali learning from superior humans, not as humans serving Trinali needs, as equals working together. That's what we want, Kethmara said. That's all we want. The meeting ended. Kethmara departed carrying a cautious hope. The request went to Earth. Weeks later, the response came back. Humanity was willing to open discussions. Small steps. No promises, but a door slightly opened. Deep in the construction zones beyond council space, engineer Taeyeon Seo stood before the primary control station. Around her, the massive exploration gate hummed with power. It was the first of its kind, a human-designed system that would open new paths to distant stars. Status report, she called out. Her team responded with confirmations. Power stable. Alignment perfect. Safety systems green. Everything was ready. This gate doesn't point toward council space, her assistant noted. Taeyeon smiled. No, it points toward the galactic rim, toward younger civilizations, toward species who see us as partners, not threats. She initiated the final sequence. The council wanted to teach us our place. They wanted us to understand we were too young, too dangerous. They taught us we didn't need their approval instead. The gate activated. Through the swirling energy, they could see new stars, new worlds, new possibilities. Humanity's future didn't lie in returning to what was. It lay in building what could be. On New Sol Station, Taemin finished his lecture. The students filed out, minds full of questions and ideas. Jisoo-Ryu lingered behind. Ambassador Park, do you think we'll ever rejoin the council? Taemin considered the question. The council as it was doesn't exist anymore. Maybe someday, if the species who remain rebuild and approach us as true equals, we might work together again. But we won't beg for acceptance. We won't compromise who we are for approval. He looked at her kindly. Your generation gets to build relationships without that baggage. You get to start fresh. That's a lot of responsibility. Yes, but also a lot of opportunity. Taemin gathered his materials. The council taught us a valuable lesson. Sometimes the right choice is to walk away, to choose self-respect over accommodation, to build your own path rather than follow someone else's. Jisoo nodded slowly. Thank you, sir. After she left, Taemin stood alone in the empty lecture hall. Through the window, he could see construction continuing on the station. New modules being added, new ships being built. Humanity was thriving, growing, reaching for the stars with confidence. 5 years ago, he had walked out of the council chambers with nothing but dignity. Now he stood in a civilization that had transformed that dignity into strength. The council had meant to put humanity in its place. Instead, they had freed humanity to find its own place. Far away in the remnants of council space, the survivors struggled on. Some would rebuild. Some would fade. Some might eventually reach out to humanity again as the Trinali had, seeking partnership rather than dominance. But that was their journey to make. Humanity had moved forward. They had found new friends, new allies, new purposes. They had built a future without waiting for permission. And in the end, that was the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes you don't need to be part of something to be successful. Sometimes you just need to believe in yourself and walk your own path, regardless of who tries to stop you. The council had closed a door. Humanity had opened 1,000 new ones, and they had done it all by simply choosing to leave quietly and with dignity, letting their departures speak louder than any words ever could.